Hi there. Welcome to this INE's presentation on VMware vSphere 6.0. My name is Donald Batcher, and I'll be your instructor for the next 4 courses on vSphere 6.0. In this overview, I want to give you guys an idea of what to expect in this series, as well as to talk about a bit about the hardware and software requirements for you to follow along with the demonstration that we'll be doing. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about myself. So let's get right into this overview. Our first course will be titled Introduction to VMware vSphere. In this course, we'll build some basic knowledge. We'll cover basic things like installation and configuration of ESXi, vCenter server, and those sort of stuff before move on to the advanced vSphere 6.0 course. So once we build some knowledge from the introduction, we go over to the VMware advanced course. This is where we'll cover some topics like DRS, DPM, HA, and those other stuff. So once we have that in place, we'll have our third course, which is monitoring and troubleshooting a VMware vSphere environment. Here we'll use some basic monitoring tools to monitor infrastructure. More specifically, a great bulk of this would be on the vSphere or the vCenter Operations Manager. Our final course in this series would be on implementing VMware vSphere data protection and replication. The bulk of these topics would base mostly on vSphere data protection and vSphere replication. So what we'll cover in these courses are backups, replication, and those sort of solutions. We'll do demonstration on deploying them as well as administering these environments. If you'd like to follow along, which I would strongly recommend you do, I would recommend some hardware and software solutions here. So we'll get into that a little bit just now. Let's talk a bit about the infrastructure that I'll be running these demonstrations on. I'll be running all of this on a laptop, and this is based on a quad-core CPU with 32 gigs of memory and 2 SSDs. You could opt to use one physical server, load your ESXi onto that, and then deploy multiple VMs running ESXi on that. So this is basically what's called a nested virtualization platform. Or you could have, if you have the hardware, you could run ESXi on separate physical servers, connect these all up to a physical switch, and you could have like multiple VLANs and the full works. That's if you do have the hardware. But for now, let's talk a bit about what we would need. So I'll run my infrastructure here on Windows 7. Then on top of that, I have VMware Workstation. So on top of VMware Workstation now, I'll run my Windows Server and my hypervisor. You could have the VMware Workstation from VMware. I think they give you this for 30 days to try. So just for this course, you guys could download that and try that out. The same goes for Windows Server. You could download that from Microsoft. I think they give you 180 days to test that out too. So let's make this a little bit clearer. Let me just draw this out, what our infrastructure could be like to follow along. Okay, so I just drew this actually. We have my laptop here, and I'll be running VMware Workstation on top of this. Then above that, we'll have Windows Server. So this in this case, this Windows Server running in our VMware Workstation would be our DNS server, our Active Directory domain controller. It would be our NTP source for our time there. This would be our iSCSI target for when we're demonstrating shared storage technology, as well as our NAS to do our NFS or network file system shares. Then we'll have a couple ESXi running on this. Here we would have our vCenter server running on one, and just for deployment's sake or for testing, I would just like to demonstrate the vCenter server appliance. But in the end, we will be using a Windows server with the vCenter server application running on it. We would not be using the vCenter server appliance. Then that's one scenario. Scenario two, we could have our ESXi deployed on a physical box, and then we have multiple physical servers running on top of this. Then we'll have our VM on top of that, and then we just connect over to this on our vSphere client. Scenario 3 here, we could run all these servers individually, 3 physical servers, physical switch, and connect everything up together and have our vSphere client connect over to this. So these are just different ways how we could deploy this for our demonstration. We'll go with number 1 there because that's what I have in my infrastructure here. So let's get back to our slides. Okay, so some of you might wonder why we need that Windows Server box running on our VMware workstation. As I mentioned, that would serve as our DNS server to support name resolution in our infrastructure. So we would deploy an Active Directory domain controller there too, so we could demonstrate authentication against our AD database. This would be from our vSphere infrastructure. And also, we deploy an AD there too, so that we could demonstrate joining our ESXi host to our AD for users and group authentication in the absence of a vCenter server. This box, as I mentioned, would also serve as an NTP server for our ESXi host and other various appliances that we would be deploying that would require a time source. It will also serve as our iSCSI target and our NAS. So to sum this up, I'm using Windows Server, then I'm running VMware Workstation on top of that. You could use some other OS if you'd like. If you have limited hardware, you could try to run your iSCSI target and your NFS and stuff like that on OpenFiler or FreeNAS. You could also download a copy of your vSphere 6.0 from VMware. You just need to register, and VMware would give you up to 60 days, I think, to test that out. So in that 60 days, you have access to all the good stuff there. You would have your ESXi hypervisor, you would have your vCenter server application as well as your vCenter server appliance. So let me just talk a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, my name is Donald Batcher. I've been in the networking field for about 10 years. I've been working with Microsoft and VMware virtualization technology for about 9-10 years too. I have a bachelor's degree in management as well as a master's of business administration. I started off my IT career, working mostly with hardware and end user support about 10 years ago, and then move on to more core networking technologies and with different roles, supporting mostly Cisco networks. I'm currently a CCNP, routing and switching, and I'm working on my CCIE. I'm also VCP certified on vSphere 5.5.